Hello everyone, my name is Jordan and welcome back to a brand new video. In this one, I'm going to show you how to hide what people are holding on your Minecraft server. This is something we just did in our Among Us game that we launched a few days ago. Go ahead and it'll be video on this side over here. Go ahead and click on that video if you'd like to learn more about that. Without further ado, let's dive right into how this works. So I've got my Minecraft server running here and I've got my account hooked up with all sorts of stuff in their hands. And if I go ahead and type /hide held, it's going to hide the items in the player's hands here. If I change this held to say all, then it's going to hide all equipment. And if I go back to none, it shows everything. Now, in fact, I am holding these items. So if I switch to all here, I'm definitely holding these items. I can scroll through them here, and I'll do that right now, and nothing's happening. I can fishing rod, and that works just fine. I can even hit, and it does the same amount of damage that you would expect there. I can throw the items at the other player, and that works just fine. The only difference is this player right here cannot see what I'm holding or what I'm doing, or what I'm wearing either. If I was to throw this off here, that also comes off as well. And if they were to put this on here, this isn't visible either. So that's how the plugin works. So I've opened up IntelliJ, but before we get into this, make sure to check the description right next to the subscribe button for all the source code I'm going to talk about in this video. If you just like to use this in your own plugins and not really worry about what it does, you can take this code and tweak it and modify it. That's all open for free right next to that subscribe button. Make sure to hit that on your way down. If you are just wanting to learn about how this stuff works, the rest of this video is for you. You also should subscribe. Don't worry, that's not just for you, people wanting the code. Everybody should subscribe. Okay, so let's dive right in. There's two things right here that we have to worry about. This thing I've made up called the Equipment Packet Processor. This is something I've written in this project myself. And there's this thing called a packet listener, and there's a thing called packet adapter in here, all this stuff. So we're using two things to power this plugin. We're using ProtocolLib and the net.minecraft.server packet system. Let's dive into each of these things one by one. ProtocolLib is a library that's been around for years that essentially allows us as developers to interact in a more flexible way with the Minecraft server code. So what I mean by that is when we're writing this code that involves these things called packets, it's really complicated and we have to deal with things at a very low level. ProtocolLib can sort of help us get rid of that complexity and make things really easy to use in our regular everyday plugins. So that is why we're using ProtocolLib. It helps us access these things. It also happens to allow us to listen for different packets, and I'll define a packet in just a second. It helps us listen for different packets going from the player to the server or from the server to a particular player. So that is what ProtocolLib is letting us do in this example. So what is a packet? Let's go to 1A here. A packet is just a little bit of information that, again, a player sends to the server, or the server sends to a player, that describes an action taking place. So like a player putting on armor, for example, that is a packet that's being sent between the server and other players, because the server is told by a player that, hey, I put on this armor, and then the server tells every other player connected saying, hey, player number 3 changed their armor. Go ahead and update your game accordingly. So that is how this particular packet works. So to use ProtocolLib, we just access the protocol library's protocol manager here. It's this great static function we can use. We add a packet listener called, or not called anything, but we pass in a new packet adapter, which takes in an instance of our plugin, as well as a list of packets we want to listen for. So in our case, we only want to listen to the entity equipment packet. So that's what this is right here. We can include more of these if we wanted to listen to multiple packets as well. In our case with this plugin, all we have to listen for is this one packet because we're trying to figure out when the server is informing a particular player that an entity's equipment has changed. So that's all we have to worry about here. Okay. From there, we're using our equipment packet processor by calling its process method, and we're passing in the packet event given to us by ProtocolLib when a packet is about to be sent to a player. That's what this method is called for. So let's go ahead and talk about equipment packet processor. There are two of them, along with a null value. So first of all, if the processor is null, we're just returning. We're getting out of here. Getting out of town, because there's nothing we need to do. This packet can just be sent freely. We don't want to do any modifications with it. Otherwise, though, there's two types in this plugin. There is the held equipment packet processor and the all equipment packet processor. These correspond to what parts of equipment we want to hide. So in the event we want to hide just what's being held, we switch to this processor. Otherwise, we turn on the all equipment processor. So I'm going to talk about just the all equipment packet processor for a moment because it's going to help us explain what the held equipment packet processor does. So we've opened up all equipment packet processor. We're going to start here. This is just an implementation of equipment packet processor, which hides all player equipment regardless of if it's something they're holding in their hands or if it's something they're wearing as armor. We don't care. We just turn all of it off. Okay, and this is the code. This is all we have to do to modify the packet and tell it that we're good. So thanks for watching. No, I'm just kidding, of course. Let's explain what this is actually doing here. So we get our packet event from ProtocolLib, and when we're using ProtocolLib, generally speaking, we can use these really nice helper methods that allow us to access all sorts of data really easily. Unfortunately, ProtocolLib really hasn't been updated much for 1.16. And one of the packets that got some major changes and, in fact, improvements in 1.16 was the packet playout entity equipment. Again, this is the packet we want to listen for, which makes 1.16 doing this a little bit problematic. Because this packet has changed, it means ProtocolLib doesn't understand some of these new concepts introduced in it, so we have to do things a bit manually. If you look up ProtocolLib code from other places, generally speaking, it will not be as messy as this. And in fact, if you understand this code, you'll have a really easy time using ProtocolLib as a whole with other projects. So more power to you for watching this particular video and then going and applying these sorts of general concepts elsewhere. So we need the raw Minecraft packet that's being sent from the server to a particular player. And there's a great way we can get that. We get the packet from the event, and this is a packet container class, which is a ProtocolLib representation of a packet. And that happens to have a way to get the Minecraft server packet, which is what we actually want to modify here. Again, because ProtocolLib hasn't been updated and doesn't know how to modify this particular packet in this new way that Mojang has modified it to be. So we call getHandle on the packet class here, and this returns the object called raw packet. So this is just the packet containers method here, and it just returns this raw object type. From there, we need to actually access some fields on this packet and modify them. I happen to know what this packet is because it's always the entity equipment packet from the way I've written this plugin. If you had multiple types of packets you were handling, you do need to do a little check, like right here saying that if raw packet is, blah, 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 right? That would be a thing you'd have to do. In our case, we always know we're using an entity equipment packet, and therefore we don't have to worry about those kinds of checks. We always know what this packet will have in it, so long as Mojang doesn't update it a second or third time. Which, since they just updated it, as in the making of this video, I think we're good for a few years. Okay, let's go ahead and line by line this. I've opened up the actual Minecraft packet so we can understand exactly what this code over here on the left is doing, because if you don't understand the code on the right, at least a little bit, you're really going to have trouble following this code here. This code is a little bit more abstract, whereas this code is the actual packet, so it's a little bit easier to understand. It's made to be that way. So this packet has two bits of information. It has an integer and a list of pairs of, and we'll get into that in a second. This integer is the entity ID. So since this is packet player entity equipment, we need to identify the entity somehow. Minecraft identifies entities with an integer value, like 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And let's say player 52 puts on diamond armor. This A variable will have 52 inside of it. So pretty cool. From there, we have a list of pairs, and each pair is an item slot to an item stack. So what item is in this slot, basically, is what that's saying. And generally speaking, this will contain a pair for almost, I think every single item slot ends up in this pair. So that's what this packet contains. We have our entity ID and a list of pairs, and the pairs are of an item slot to an item stack. So the head slot or the hand slot or etc. And then whatever item is in those particular slots. That's what that means. If we look in the item slot class here, you can just see it's main hand, offhand, feet, chest, hat, etc. All the things on your player. So that's all that is. So let's go ahead and talk about what we need to do to change each item or each piece of equipment to nothing, right? We need to figure out, first of all, we need to access this B variable, or this list here. It's a private final variable, which means we have to do some complex things in order to access it, because Java doesn't let us just walk up to this class and access it. And besides that, we don't even have access to this class directly. We have this thing called, we have just an object, right? We can't access these things directly, even if we wanted to. So we have to use this thing called reflection. And we'll get into that in just a second. From there, once we've accessed these pairs, we need to actually modify them so that instead of whatever item that we're trying to, the server wants to send to each player, we just replace that item with air. So that is our two-step process for how to change this. First of all, we need to figure out what exists in this list, and then second of all, we need to change everything to air. So seems simple enough. Okay, let's do that. We get the pair field. So a field is in this thing called reflection, which is how we access different fields and methods and classes at runtime instead of compile time. Runtime is when your plugin is running. Compile time is when you are actually building it into a jar file. So, if you install a plugin on your server or you run Spigot, those are jar files. You're doing the same thing. You're basically compiling your code. You're packaging it into this file. So that's compile time. And that means we have to actually know all of the types and the packages of every dependency or every class we want to use, which means we can't use this packet directly. And let me explain why. Every single time there's a Spigot server update or a Minecraft server update, this package changes. This part doesn't. This is always net.minecraft.server. It always has been, and most likely always will be. But this ending bit with a version in here, this changes every single update. So in this case, I'm writing for 1.16.2, and funny enough, I'm actually running my server that I showed in the beginning of the video. That's a 1.16.3 server, which I'll talk about in just a moment. Because I'm running on 1.6, or I'm writing for 1.16.2, if I were to run a different server and attempt to use this class directly, I would have a lot of problems and it wouldn't work because I'm trying to use one version of a class with another version of a class. And unfortunately, when we run the server, if the server version does not match what we've written, then our plugin is going to complain and say, hey, I don't know where to find this class. The import statement you've used is wrong. It doesn't exist. So that is why we can't use these things directly. We can, but it means you have to guarantee your server version is a specific version. And generally speaking, we really can't be bothered with that. We also want our code to run without these kinds of updates as frequently because it means that our plugins will break and our players will be unhappy that we're taking forever to update our server or our plugin or whatever you're making. So that is why we access things like this indirectly. Okay, so recall that raw packet is packet playout entity equipment. So if we get its class, this is returning this class right here. This class happens to have some fields in it, which we just talked about, A and B, and we can get those fields by saying get declared field and then passing in the name of the field. The reason we're using declared here is because these are private fields. We could use get field if they were public, but since they're private, we have to use declared right there. It's the same thing if you use get declared constructor on a class. If the constructor is not public, you have to use declared, or else Reflection and Java are not going to know what you're talking about. So we've gotten our field, but there's also this final keyword, which means we can't change its value. To get around this, we're going to delete this keyword by setting accessible on pair field to true. So this is like removing that keyword, getting rid of final, and allowing us to change the value. So we've now made this field accessible. We've gotten the field. And from there, let's actually read the current entity equipment that we're looking at. So I'm going to move this back over here, go full screen again. So now that we have B, we can actually grab the value of B. And of course, that's a list of pairs of an item slot to an item stack. So we can create a list of pairs of object and object, because recall in Java, every single class is an object, whether we write that out or not. And so we need two lists. We need our new pair list here, which is what we're going to replace the existing pair list with eventually. And we need to actually grab the existing pair list so we know what we're changing. We can do that by getting the pair field and then saying .get, and then we pass in our raw packet. This is the same thing as saying raw packet.getB or raw packet.b if it was a public field. So that's all that's doing. From there, we're also casting what we get because get returns a raw object here. We're casting that to a list of pairs of object, this type right here. So you can ignore this being yellow. That's just IntelliJ not really understanding what we're trying to do here. It's perfectly safe to do. From there, we're going to loop over our existing pairs. We're going to get the item slot object, and since we can look at our class here, we know the first item in the pair is our item slot, and the second is the item stack. We only care about the item slot, because that's what's going to help us form our new pair. So we're going to get that slot, and then we're going to pass it into a newly constructed pair, and then we're going to call this Nms Helper to Minecraft item stack method, which takes in a bucket item stack and converts it to a Minecraft item stack. Believe it or not, these two things are different. The Minecraft server only understands Minecraft item stacks, so we have to use this method I've written to convert between the two. And then we just pass that into our pair. So we've created a new pair of an item slot to a Minecraft item stack, except this time the item stack is error. Don't pass in null here, because that will crash your server, and it will also make other plugins really unhappy with you if they also deal with packets. So replace it with error, be safe. Okay, and we add that to our new pair list. From there, at the very end, once we've generated our new pairs, we go ahead and set the B field again on raw packet to our new list. And then we turn off the accessible modifier, which basically is like retyping final in front of the list. And that's almost it. From there, the last thing we have to do is set our packet on the event to a new ProtocolLib version of our packet, and we pass in our raw packet object right here. This from packet method takes a Minecraft packet and it converts it to a ProtocolLib packet. So we went from a ProtocolLib packet to a Minecraft packet, modify the Minecraft packet, then we need to go back from a Minecraft packet to a ProtocolLib packet, so ProtocolLib can continue its process from there. And that's it. That is all we have to do to hide all equipment from a player. Or from all players. It's super, super simple. So next step is hiding specifically held items and items in someone's offhand. So let's open up the held equipment packet processor. This code is almost identical in function. It replaces the specific item slots with error, but the addition here is that we're checking the item slot to make sure that it's either the hand or the offhand. So let's start up at our constructor. We create the objects for the hand and the offhand so we know what they are. These are just instances of our enum item slot, and we get them by getting that class and then getting the main hand and offhand values from it. So this right here, this .get null after saying get field, is how you get a variable in reflection off of an enum. You have to call get null because this is sort of like saying it's static, right? We don't have an instance of enum item slot because an enum is, you don't have instances of an enum. That wouldn't make sense. So we call .get null for this field. And then we save those right here so we can refer to them later when we process our packet. Perfect. So we do the same thing. We access our packet, we get the B field, we set it accessible, create our lists, and so on and so forth, loop through them. And then from there, the only thing differently is we've got this thing called replaced, and we set it equal to pair by default, and then we add replace to our new pair list instead of creating a new pair all the time. And if we do need to create a new pair, which we check right here, we're saying if the item slot for this pair is the hand or the offhand, then we want to replace that item with air. So that is the only difference, is these two lines of code, and we access these slots right up here. So that's it. That's all we have to do. The only other thing to look at is our Nms Helper class, and that'll help explain a little bit more about what we're doing with packets here. So here is Nms Helper. It's got a whole bunch of nice helpful methods we can use already pre-reflected for us that are tried and tested. Let's talk about the Nms format. So if we look in our packet here, we notice the package is net.minecraft.server and then the server version. We need to be able to get that version so we can tell our plugin what version to look for, because otherwise we don't know, because we don't know what plugin or what server version our plugin's running on until it's running. So that is why we've got this method here called getVersion. So when we call bucket.getServer, this server right here is actually an interface, which means it has to be a different class other than this interface. You can't have an instance of an interface, right? We implement an interface and we can have an instance of that class. In Bucket's case, this class is actually called craft server. And this class is located under org.bucket.craftbucket. And then there's a version right there, which is the exact same as net.minecraft.server. And that's what makes this work here. That's our little bit of magic. And then at the end of that, it's craft server. So because we know that, this method right here is saying get the server's class, which is craft server, get its package, which is org.craftbucket. org.bucket.craftbucket. And then it's in my case at least, v116r2 dot craft server. This is our class name and our package as well. And when we say get name here, we're getting the name of the package. Then we're just using regex here to split based on a dot, and then we're getting index 3. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3. 3 happens to be v116r2, which is the same as our Minecraft server. So that is the foundation for accessing the version of the server we're running on at runtime. Perfect. So from there, We can then use get version in these two functions called get NMS class and get craft bucket class. These just pass in the format of our package for net.minecraft.server and craft bucket. We throw in our version and we throw in the class name that we're trying to access right here, and everything works perfectly. So that's how we get classes from NMS and craft bucket. So the last thing to note is this to Minecraft item stack method. This converts a bucket item stack into a Minecraft item stack because they're not the same thing. Minecraft only understands Minecraft item stacks. Fortunately, the craft item stack class inside of the org.bucket, you get the idea, the inventory sub package followed by craft item stack. This class has a static method called as_nmsCopy, which takes in an item stack. So that's what this does right here, is it gets that method. From there, we just call invoke. So on reflection method objects, we can call invoke to actually call that method. And we can pass in null. And the reason we're passing in null is because it's a static method. There is no reference to this object we need. And then we pass in the bucket item stack because this method takes in a bucket item stack. From there, we return the result of this call to whoever wants it in the form of an object. And this object happens to be a Minecraft item stack class. The last two things here are just for sending packets to any player that we want in the form of an object, which if we actually look into our equipment packet processor, we have this method called refresh equipment of all players, which actually creates our own equipment packet and sends it to all players based on what they actually have on them. So if they're holding something, what they have on their armor, etc. The reason we're doing this is when we actually change the value of our, if we're hiding or showing armor or showing only held items, we need to refresh every client's view of that player. Because if we change it, the packet doesn't mysteriously resend. The packet there only changes when they change their items. So if they were to like scroll in their inventory or change their armor, that sends a new equipment packet. Because we're changing whether or not we want these packets to be received, that means we need to send a new one of our own to let our code run for its first time. And do its modifications so that the state is in line with what command we've typed. And so that's literally all this does. The only new thing here is this constructor. So we're getting the packet class. We're getting the declared constructor, which takes in an int and a list, which is this one right here, the entity's ID, and a list of pairs of our own. We go back in here, and oops, wrong place. Where'd it go? There we go. We loop over every item slot, which is this class enum I've made right here, which just lists and makes an easy way for us to access this enum item slot class. It converts to Minecraft item stacks, converts to bucket item stacks, and all this fun stuff. And that's it. That's all we have to do. We just set up these pairs. Oops, oh my gosh, I went to the wrong place again. We set up these pairs based on the slot we're iterating over and the Minecraft item stack for that slot. And then we create a new packet and send it to every online player. That's it. That is all we have to do. The only other thing of note, if we go in our plugin, is just the command is setting these equipment processors to new instances of whatever we changed. And then inside of this, we just refresh the equipment using onEnable or refresh right here. So that's it. I know it's quite a lot, but don't worry. If you do still have questions after watching the video, go ahead and join our community Discord to ask some questions of some really smart people and me as well. If I have some time available, I answer questions as well. If you have other questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. If you did like the video, make sure to leave a like. And if you have other suggested video ideas, join our Discord as well. And we've got a video requests channel, so you can put in your idea and I might do it for you. This was an audience requested video. So thank you very much for that suggestion. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I got those two mixed up. And yeah, I'll be back soon with another video. Thank you very much for watching.